Day 4, number 2. My message to all churches. I, the Christ, have come expressly to tell you the truth about the origins of the human personality. I will explain exactly why and how mankind has been given a natural inbuilt propensity for self-will and a controlling desire for self-gratification and self-defense. This is not a sin, but part of the natural creative processes. There is no punishment from on high. Men, through the willful and harmful exercise of their ego power, draw to themselves their own punishment. Note well, for this reason, just as scientific school textbooks become redundant as the human mind discovers and absorbs more advanced scientific knowledge, so should the present form of Christianity, built upon spurious doctrines centered around my crucifixion, be allowed to die a natural death. NB. Your present global crisis, introducing a new breakdown of international law and laying the foundation for future global terrorism, clearly indicates that no religion in the world possesses the requisite knowledge and effective leadership to initiate changes in human mental patterns which will lead directly to peace and prosperity. Number 3. The true spiritual leader. The true spiritual leader will be able to show their congregations how and why modern mindsets have created the calamities and horrors which have been created in consciousness and are only just beginning to make themselves fully felt in your midst as diverse forms of pestilence and earthquakes, floods, famines, wars, revolution, and other tragedies. Be assured, no evil which comes to your earth is a natural disaster. Everything inimical to your perfect welfare is bred first in your human consciousness and then given form within your global experience. This is what I tried to tell the Jews when I walked the earth, and wept when they laughed and refused to believe it. They called me a madman. Let not the churches make the same mistake. Because the churches have been moribund, cemented into rituals and dogmas, their priests and pastors have been unable to meet the evolving spiritual needs of ardent seekers of truth. As a result, the churches are emptying. If they are to endure, the churches must put aside their differences and have the humility to accept that inspiration does not necessarily come to earth in ways acceptable to themselves. They must remember that I, the Christ, was not acceptable to the Jews. The churches must keep open minds and hearts to receive what they intuitively feel is a higher truth than that to which they presently cling, and to abandon the old beliefs which have permitted the beast to take control of human thought. Pray sincerely with all your souls, minds, hearts for true enlightenment, rather than a reiteration of old and false beliefs. Wake up and accept that these rituals and past beliefs have not fulfilled my words to mankind when I promised that greater things than I did would you do. Meanwhile, until true enlightenment comes to you, after much meditation and prayer, teach, demonstrate, and live brotherly love with all the strength of soul, heart, and mind, minute by minute in your daily lives. Because to combat the global destructive consciousness forces, humanity must make every effort to move on swiftly to the next stage of its development. Number 4. Urgent need for a higher vision. It must be widely accepted that there is a higher vision to strive to implement in your daily lives. It is only by reaching for a higher vision that the physical world will be rescued from wholesale annihilation. Without the vision, either for the self or for the world, there can be no spiritual evolution or the achievement of those greatly desired, of those things greatly desired. At the present time, your perception of life is one of travail and deprivation. These beliefs are shockingly depicted and reinforced by your TV viewing. They later bring upon you the misery you hope will never happen to you. Therefore, to save from your own folly expressed through the media and TV, the human consciousness must be speedily uplifted to see what I saw in the desert, the reality of love behind and within all existence. And B. When this great truth is both perceived and warmly acknowledged, the reality of love will begin to manifest itself in multiple ways in every living thing and in the environment itself. The experience of abundance and joy will reinforce the consciousness of abundance and joy. And so, a spiritual spiral of ever more exalted and wondrous living will be set in motion. When the true nature of being is fully understood, humanity will move on to the next rung of spiritual evolution and will put into motion a new and blessed form of human endeavor and personal experience. To achieve these goals, humanity must first gain insight into what and who you are. Number 5. What and who you are. A new and important question is already coming into people's consciousness. Who are you, really, behind the facade you present to the world? What does it take to be real or real? It is this question of who you really are which is answered on every level of your being within these pages. And if you can accept as your own guidelines for daily living all that I understood during my 6 weeks desert experience, you too will eventually become whole and real, even as I became whole and real before I commenced my ministry of healing and teaching. Since there are few people in the world who would regard themselves as whole at this present time, you must surely recognize that there is the most urgent necessity for me to intrude into your minds, to lead you into a new way of thought and feeling. Such a change in consciousness will bring you into divine harmony with reality and better living conditions and security. To be able to do this work of reconstruction within your consciousness, I must first impress on your minds, and you must accept there was much that I thought in Palestine which men were not yet ready to receive. Significantly, it has never been publicly questioned why there is no record of my early life as a young man. What was the true reason for such an all-important omission? Equally significant, although I spent 6 weeks in the desert after my baptism and emerged from that experience as a teacher and head healer, no one writer has even attempted to describe what actually took place during that time other than what I was tempted of the devil and was wild beasts. And the angels were with him. There is not the slightest hint as to what happened to me in the desert which would enable me to come back to towns and villages proclaiming the kingdom of God is within, and to speak in the synagogues that the Jewish leaders were astonished. The truth regarding my youth was by common consent of my disciples suppressed to give greater credence to my supposed divinity and ministry. According to the Gospels, it was said of me that I was the only Son of God. Why then did I frequently refer to myself as the Son of Man? I specifically made these statements to counteract the prevalent beliefs in my divinity and press on people's minds that I was the same physical origins as themselves. I intended them to understand that what I could do, they could also do if I only had my knowledge and followed my instructions for right thinking and action, right action. So many myths have risen around my earthly person and my spiritual consciousness that it is time to be rid of them as completely as possible, since they are preventing people from evolving spiritually. You, who have been indoctrinated with religious teachings, must try to understand that when describing my life, my disciple gospelers related only what they personally remembered, which fully supported their account of my supernatural activities. They also included much that had been spoken of me by others during the 30-odd years following my death. After such a lapse of time and inevitable embroidery of truth, how could they possibly write an authoritative biography of me and of what really happened, or properly explain my true spiritual perceptions which gave birth to my words and miracles? Only one person can write from this standpoint, and that is myself. Therefore, these letters will bring you my truth in a way that no spectator could possibly tell it, no matter how well they thought they understood my thinking. For this reason, over 40 years, my recorder's mind has been systematically cleansed of all orthodox teachings, and the system of communication between us has been perfected. If my truth, expressed in these letters, differs from much written in your New Testament, is it to be wondered or at or rejected for that reason? Therefore, I am descending in consciousness briefly, as near as necessary, to your plane of consciousness to describe my life and teachings over 2,000 years ago. My place in history. I must first point out that my life and person were briefly referred to in the History of the Jews, written by Josephus for the Roman governor and presented to the Roman emperor. Josephus briefly noted that Jesus, who attempted to overthrow law and order and the governance of the Romans, was punished and crucified. It has been argued that this was some other Jesus recorded by Josephus. But this is not so. I, who later became the Christ, who performed so-called miracles of healing and materialization, was the insurrectionist. But I was no rabble-rouser. I did not deliberately stir people up to defy the Romans and disrupt law and order. I was a rebel against existing Jewish traditions, and because when I emerged for my 6 weeks sojourn in the desert, I saw a better way to think and live, and I tried to pass on my knowledge to my fellow Jews with little success. It is important you should understand that the pressure of public opinion weighed with my followers. Whilst they truly believed I had brought a soul-saving message to the Jews and was the Messiah, the Son of God, they were also of the world, trying to relate to the world as best they could. Therefore, although they knew my reactive feelings towards the Jewish beliefs, they were not happy to dispense with the Old Testament altogether, since it had supported and kept the Jews together throughout their history. In the interests of preserving what they thought to be valuable in the old dispensation, they suppressed any description of the person I was.